sure to state your name and address.
Michelle Stonemark, 40 North DePauli. Yes, just want to make sure. I need stuff so we can
I was
see.
gonna say, are you?
No, I'm just in flats.
No. I need a phone book to see on that.
I do. I need a phone book or at least a step stool or something. Kara and I talked a lot through all of these points before coming here tonight because we both didn't want to reiterate the same things over and over again. So I will first start by saying that I do agree with what Kara said.
Make sure because it's not picking up.
Is it picking me up now? Okay, I have to get real close.
Yeah.
So I do want to reiterate that I do agree with everything that Kara said. And just to go a little further past that, I would like to see our oil and gas ordinance be more specific to the industry as a whole. I feel like a lot of what it is now is only about the actual drilling company. You know, we'll use Range as the example because they're the ones currently here. And it doesn't include as widely a spectrum as it should, you know, as in the pipe laying companies that are coming in now to put in the pipelines and the companies that, you know, Mark West who comes in, whoever the companies are, it needs to be a broader spectrum of what's included because, you know, when she talked a little bit about road closures and construction updates, you know, I put on my house on Saturday and I got down to right at the Augustine entrance and the gentleman was very good, very nice. He came up to my car and he said, the road's gonna be closed for 20 minutes. He said, is there another way you can go because the road's gonna be closed for the next 20 minutes? And I said, well, yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just turn around and I'll go the other way. But there was no way for anybody else in the township to know that North DePauli Road was going to be closed for 20-minute increments throughout the day on Saturday. So don't take North DePauli if you don't have to. You know, it's just very inconvenient for the residents to not know that sort of thing. So I think that if that was something like that was implemented across the industry and not just limited right to the driller themselves, you know, it would be more beneficial for the township as a whole. And I also feel the same way, and I mentioned this also in the Connor Samuels hearing, was that the same goes for the blackout schedules for the buses. You know, they're doing the pipeline and the bus is sitting for 20 minutes because they don't have to adhere to the same blackout periods that, you know, the driller has to because it's not part of their conditional use or it's not in their ordinance. You know, they're not included in it, which isn't fair to the rest of us. And to touch a little bit further upon what Kara said about the trucks, there are certain parts of North DePauli Road, in particular, right in front of, once you get past the well pad and it goes up past our houses and down the Coleman Road, that portion of the road is not bonded by Range anymore. And yet, the traffic for this pipeline is nonstop all day between North DePauli and Grange, because they can't, I don't believe they can take Coleman Road, so they have to take North DePauli, so they're coming up North DePauli, so that while Range has guaranteed the bondage of North DePauli to the pad, they haven't bonded it after that from there to Coleman Road, which falls on the township. That's not falling on Range or any other company. So now the township, whatever damage happens to the road after that point, falls to the township to repair. And like I said, it's all falling under the same umbrella. It's all part of the same industry. That pipeline wouldn't be there if that pad wasn't there. So therefore, it should all be included in the same parts of the ordinance. It should all be bonded. The pipeline company should be required to bond the road if that's how they're going to travel it with these size trucks, just as the drilling company should be. One other thing, a couple other things that I really wanted to touch upon real quickly is I despise this part of our ordinance. The fact that they have their own way around this bunk housing on the site. It's really bothersome to me and unnerving to know that there's going to be people living in trailers who haven't had background checks, who haven't who aren't responsible for, you know, aren't held to the same level as Range employees because they're contracted out by the company. It's sort of like a loophole in the system for them. And I'm telling you right now, that makes me incredibly nervous they're gonna be right behind my house, and if you approve the Constantine one, then they're gonna be right by the school. And you're gonna have people that have no background checks sitting right by the school. I don't think that it's a lot to ask to put into an ordinance that anybody who is on site for an overnight shift or more than, I mean, I'm opposed to the supervisory bunkhouses altogether, so I would do away with that, period. But if that's not something that you're willing to do, then please consider that all people staying there must have background checks, including any subcontractors, any contractors, and that should be the responsibility of whoever trailer that is on site. It should not be to the towns of the township. It should not be the township's responsibility. If we want to keep, crime does come, there is a correlation. I mean, I can bring you data and statistics that crime does crime. It's mostly petty crime, but it's crime nonetheless. So it would be, I think, in the best interest of our community to require background checks on everybody. But that being said, I disagree with the use of bunkhousing altogether. We don't allow it in any other industry across the township. We don't allow it in construction. We don't allow it in manufacturing. We don't allow it in any other industry in this township. And we're going to allow it in oil and gas. It doesn't seem like that's a level playing field to me at all. And finally, the thing that bothers me the most about our oil and gas ordinance is that there is no list of consequences for any actions. There's no actions that we take against the companies if they do not follow something that's listed in the conditions or in the ordinance. So if they violate the ordinance or they violate their conditions, we as a community, and we as a township, give them a warning, slap on the wrist, if you will, say don't do that again, and then if they do it again, they get a minimum fine of like $100 a day. Let's assume for argument's sake it's $500 a day. You're fining an industry $500 a day that's worth billions. So $500 a day, let's assume that they're violating this ordinance for $500 a day is the fine. For 1 year, it's $182,500. Now that's a lot of money to me, and I'm sure it's a lot of money to most of you, but to Range Resources, that's not a lot of money. And if that's the difference between, getting away with something that's going to cost them more money to fix, then they're just going to take the fine. We have to have fines. We have to have we have to have some sort of action that we do against them when they break the rules, when they don't follow what they're supposed to do. Sort of like, if I as a citizen break the rules, I'm going to get arrested, I'm going to go to court, I'm going to get fined. I'm not suggesting anything criminal, I'm just trying to make the point that there are rules and ordinances and conditions in place for a reason, and there has to be a consequence that follows that, should they not be following them. And I think that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Crystal Burt, 1040 Windance Drive. So, not going to try to repeat a lot of what Karen and Michelle said. I'll try to touch on some other things, but I do agree and echo their concerns when it comes to distance from structures, specifically hospitals and schools. 500 feet it sounds like a lot because it's hundreds, right? But in miles, it's 0.1 miles, right? So put that in perspective. We all kind of relate more to, oh, that's about a mile down the road, a half mile. 0.1 miles, not that far. Even the proposed of 2,500, it's only half a mile. And for school, 5,000, that's a mile. So, that might seem like a lot because it's 1,000 feet, versus 500, but please allow that perspective to try to understand the impact. When it comes to the complaint system and resolution, that was continuously a concern I've heard from residents, not only in Cecil Township, but in general, that when they have a complaint, the response time and the turnaround time is the issue. So, like Kara brought up, a lot of that could be corrected with monitoring continuously, whether it's sound or air, things like that, so that it's not a reactive but more of a proactive situation. And when it comes to what we can ask of our applicants, when I read this ordinance, there's not clear, defined, quick, in my opinion, turnaround times. So if you give me a second, just to quickly reference the one part. So if a complaint is received by the township, whether a resident or otherwise using the protected structure as defined any lawful purpose regarding noise generated during drilling or hydraulic fracturing activities, the operator shall within 24 hours of receipt of the complaint from the township continuously monitor for a 48-hour period at a point which is the closer to the complaint's building up, and it kind of lists out. Now, I know based on complaints we've heard from Cecil Township residents even within, that's never been their turnaround time. And like Kara said, things can change from the noise she's hearing at 8 o'clock at night versus 8 o'clock in the morning. So, those are the types of things to take into consideration when, we have the right as the township to ask our applicants to protect your residents and allow them to live and be able to sleep. And, it's hard sometimes when it's going to be hearsay. Those monitoring systems will discount the hearsay, and it'll already be monitored at 8 p.m. The level was 80 decibels. So it's not, now it's fine, so there's nothing we can do, kind of thing. The other one is in regards to the bunkhousing. That greatly does concern me, similar to Michelle. I know most of us have full-time jobs, and I know I get background checked almost every year. And, and I don't work with children, so it's not a lot to ask an organization to provide background clearances for their employees, whether it's contract or their own. It says in here that they have to provide a list of their names, and it only says 6 to 7 should be on. I don't see a problem why, you just add the caveat that they also have to provide background checks with those names, and they have to be done on a yearly basis. I first would choose not to have, the workers living on site, because as we stated, no other industry is allowed to do that. So especially when these are getting closer and closer to people's houses and schools, that's a great concern. The notification part, like we said, I think that's great that Range is offering to do that, but that's something that should be put in writing as well. And when it comes to the notification, what they're required, right now it states on page 6, number 12, it says, the operator shall provide the following information to each resident within 1,000 feet of the planned surface location of the well, and it goes through a couple different bullet points. Again, 1,000 feet is 0.2 miles, right? So when you're looking at that, I think anyone within a half mile to a mile should be notified. The school should know, for example, they're within a mile. They should be noted, what's the contact information, what's the general description, what's the emergency plan. All of those things need to be disclosed to anybody within a mile, in my opinion. That's just for informational, educational purposes. You should be aware of what's in your backyard. Overall, just to kind of summarize, I just really hope that, we take into account what we've learned. No one in this township is against drilling. We understand it brings money, we understand it brings jobs. But as with any industry, we want it to be safe, especially when it's in our community, behind our schools, and in our community of parks and houses. This is a suburban area. This was not meant to be an industrial, I don't want to say wasteland, but that kind of seems sometimes what it's turning into. The trees continue to come down, more industry comes in, and there's less and less regulation. So we, as a township, have the ability through these ordinances to ask our applicants to follow those. And if, like it says, they have to prove that they're able to protect the residents in a safe manner, and basically, it talks about them burdening the responsibility to make sure they're safe. All of these monitoring systems we've talked about will prove that they are, and then also provide the residents the safety we're asking for. Thank you.